This is the kind of thing that happened not very far in the past, while at the films for commemoration today's, something that numerous ladies sadly go through, and individuals who do it are too considered normal. My girlfriend and I have been together for around 7 years. Presently, it's potentially been the best 7 years of my life. We've fostered a truly impressive relationship throughout the long term, and I was unable to request anything better for setting this happened last year, throughout the mid-year when we went out for our commemoration to the motion pictures. I realize many individuals say the motion pictures was likely the most exceedingly terrible spot to take your better half, yet we're truly partaking in a decent film to a great extent. On top of that, we haven't been to the motion pictures in some time, so we sorted a pleasant night out would be a much-needed refresher. This specific night was the debut of Dear John film, a film my girlfriend basically beseeched me to go to. She was even spruced up in her green outfit to match the remainder of the film. Attendees additionally seen the film. As you likely know, both Dear John and Leap Year were no joking matter for many individuals in late 2010, subsequently why we needed to go see it. At any rate, that evening we had purchased our tickets. We were guided by the ticket taker to go to Theater 3 for the film. The passage in the theater was molded like a D, so you could go either right or left. Performance Center 3 was the biggest evaluating room in the structure, an ideal size for chief appearance. The subsequent, we go inside, we're met with a group of people brimming with couples and gatherings of companions wearing green talking among the group. There must be no less than 200 or more individuals in the theater excited, trusting that the film will begin. The screen above had this kind of grayish look and variety, which showed that the sneak peeks hadn't as yet even begun. As of now, the theater is fairly stuffed to the surprise of no one. And we, before long, started to stress that we wouldn't have the option to find any seats. Now there was a segment of seats on the front, which of many were unfilled. Yet sitting toward the front of the cinema sucks, and neither of us needed to watch the film from that point. Fortunately anyway, my better half figured out how to recognize 2 void seats close to the back column. We'd take them before any other person could. They weren't the most ideal seats yet. Essentially, they weren't the first-line seats. While I hated Dear John, I actually delighted in seeing my girlfriend blissful by something I realized she'd appreciate. Sooner or later, my better half goes down to the campaign to purchase beverages, and that compelling cinema popcorn in the end. She possessed return, simply an energy for the film to begin quick forward around 10 minutes into the film. We're in the part where Dear John meeting Savannah. I pay heed to my better half, looking over at the person sitting close to the left of her. He didn't give off an impression of being with anybody, and was only sort of sitting in an odd position, not actually watching the film. Mind you, he had a hoodie on, so I couldn't see his full face yet. I could see that he was a more seasoned looking man. I'd express perhaps around 50 or 60, probably dozing. The smell of pot filled our noses, and we even considered to find one more seed or leave only one gander at him. I can perceive that he was certainly not somebody you'd see at the film like this. Of course, this was a film my girlfriend was excited about, and I would have rather not destroyed it for her quick version. We make its best, and made an honest effort just to endure the film, not contemplating him. At one point, I see the man sitting close to her start to seriously take a gander at her. In the kind of distorted way, this obviously maddened me, and I directly let him know that he continued to take a gander at her, that I summoned security. He then looks, and I felt that was the finish of it. Truth be told, he even dismissed to confront the other way so he wouldn't see us, which was okay for me as of now. We're most of the way into the film. When I glance over to my better half and I see that the man's nonchalantly attempting to contact her groin, my girlfriend fortunately sees this and gets up and begins shouting at him, which wound up standing out of the theater. I was so near taking him out, you wouldn't actually start to comprehend how pissed I was, as my girlfriend and I are taking care of him. He gets up and leaves the theater while everybody's taking a gander at one another in disarray. Kids started crying, and guardians were stunned. We leave the theater, snagging security, where my better half makes sense of what had happened. It didn't take long for security and police to track down the man in the washroom and ultimately capture him, despite the fact that he guaranteed he never did something like this anyway. My girlfriend and I clarified that he certainly did it, proclaiming we were not moronic, Police had mentioned to the board on the off chance that they could survey the recording of Theater 3 as they're exploring the recording. They see that the man had plainly gone my better half, and that basically said it all. My girlfriend and I were addressed by police, and I was offered a full discount for the comfort I support my better half until the end of night, and guaranteed her that he could at absolutely no point ever contact her in the future. Turns out the police and the theater had really disliked this person before. For comparative reasons, there was even where he had been prohibited from the theater for airdropping unseemly photographs of individuals, and surprisingly, their children. I clearly can't uncover the name of the individual because of protection reasons, yet I want to believe that he serves a strong measure of jail time. I have no clue about how he didn't go to prison for this, and I don't for even a moment recall whether he was truly shipped off jail. Obviously, we never headed out to that cinema for some time after that. At whatever point we go out elsewhere, I generally ensure my better half is in sight, and that she doesn't sit close to anybody, obscure or crude. A while ago, when I was in my mid till 19 years, I resided with my mother and two sisters in capital city Honolulu. My mother had, as of late, gotten a separation with my father, following quite a while of steady maltreatment and disregard. He'd continuously be out drinking and could never focus on us kids. When we wanted it, this brought about my mother going home early to make sure she can get us from school and cook supper, mind you. She was like Wisa, the one in particular who worked and took care of bills, while my father essentially frills stacked off of her after some time. Anyway, my mother chose to lay down the law and leave him. We battled with Lise, and my mother was nearly at the mark of a burnout. I was unable to stand seeing my mother like this, so I chose to find a part-time line of work at a nearby cinema down the road. The compensation wasn't awesome yet. It was sufficient to basically assist us with getting by my timetable, worked around school. So I had been working for the most part evenings, which implied that the theater would be pressed during the ends of the week one evening, during the week anyway. I had been called into work after one of my colleagues had stopped to go into business in custom cleaning. This made me irritated that I needed to work all the more, yet it additionally implied more cash in my pocket toward the week's end. It was a Friday night and was delayed with there just being around 6 others in the theater. There were additionally no films accessible that the vast majority needed to see, which additionally added to the absence of film attendees. With there being not very many individuals, my supervisor permitted me to think carefully while I worked, and that I might actually leave early. If no other person was here, since time was slipping away, I felt free to close the snack bar and got a brush and residue skillet to spotless. As I'm clearing the floor, I head toward the theaters and begin tidying up there when I see somebody with a hoodie on, sitting in one of the seats by the first column regularly. I wouldn't actually mind, yet the executives was getting serious about individuals remaining. After an appearance had finished as graciously as I might, I at any point shout to them saying, "Oh, sir, we're shutting everything down. Must request that you leave anyway." There was no reaction. Whoever it was simply stayed there, not in any event, recognizing me, figuring he could have been snoozing. I put down the brush and stroll over to where he was sitting when I moved. Toward the individual plunking down, I arrived at the place of understanding that this man was really a lady, I'd say about mid to late 20s. She had seemed, by all accounts, to be laying down with her head shifted back. And when I tapped her to awaken her, she falls over towards me. It was at that point when I understood that she had been dead. Her pale, dormant body just laid there on the floor, while I was essentially shouting my lungs out while crying. This stood out of my chief and my other collaborator, who had come in to see what happened, who were legitimately panicked too. My director advised us to go while he called the police to report it. Peculiarly, I didn't recall registering this lady with the theater, meaning she presumably snuck in with somebody. The whole cinema was emptied and had transformed into a crime location. Inside the hour, there were lots of police and some other vehicle that read, "Insightful Crime Location Unit," or something. I looked as the paramedics conveyed her into the rescue vehicle, while my collaborator and I just sat in despair. Somebody someplace cherished that lady truly. And I was unable to envision the aggravation and sadness her family had when they found out about her passing. What exacerbated it is that police couldn't distinguish regarding how she kicked the bucket. Even after a post-mortem, many have estimated that she had kicked the bucket from a medication excess or even a stroke. I quit my place of employment after that, as I was unable to stand the consistent idea of that lady. I'm presently 22 and have moved past it, and presently fill in as a self-employed entity for a deals organization. I haven't come back nor worked at one more cinema from that point forward, and have recently adhered to watching real-time features, all things considered. This occurred around a month prior, while I was working my seasonal occupation at a cinema. This isn't the kind of story to take you leap out of your seat kind of story. Yet it's an illustration of how unnerving artificial intelligence has become. At any rate here, it was a Sunday night, and I had been tidying up one of the venues following a gigantic appearance of Night Swim, a film that ought to have never been made. I might want to add, I'm clearing the floor and gathering pails of spilled popcorn when I get a call from an obscure number. Now, I regularly don't answer obscure calls yet for reasons unknown. I respond to it and hear my mother on the opposite end. She sounds troubled on the opposite end and wildly lets me know something that made my blood run cold. Honey, you want to pay attention to me? These individuals, they captured me. You really want to send them $20,000, or probably they will kill me kindly. Do it now, legitimately. I advise her to wait, and that will do it. I race to my supervisor and make sense of the circumstance, and he advises me to step outside, and that he was calling the police. I call my mother from her phone, and she gets this time. She sounds entirely typical. I tell her not to stress, and that I'll send the cash, and that I want the record number right now. She's in a split second confounded, utilized, and had said that she didn't have a clue. I proceeded to make sense of the call I had gotten, and after a few affirmations, we arrived at the understanding that anything call I had gotten wasn't from my mother, whoever sent. That call was utilizing computer-based intelligence to match my mother's voice to make sure they could get a speedy buck. Say thanks to God I called her genuine telephone, or in all likelihood I would have been misled truly. We had a go at detailing it to the police, yet there was eventually nothing they could do to follow it, since it was a phony number to any other person watching. I underline too, if it's not too much trouble, mull over sending cash to anybody. Artificial intelligence has gotten excessively far with these phony calls, and it's terrifying to figure the number of individuals that could have succumbed to this.